women of Reddit who were proposed by their so-and said no. What's your story? I loved him. If he asked me to get married 3 days before, I would have said yes. But I received a message 2 days before the proposal from someone telling me that he was part of a gang, with proof and everything. Dating a guy for a few years, was 20 years old at the time, very controlling, wasn't going great. We were opening Christmas presents with his family when he asked. He proposed while saying he loved the woman I would become one day. I said yes in public, but no in private. If you don't even love me now, why propose now? Needless to say, it didn't last long. He proposed as a knee-jerk reaction when we were going through a rough patch. It was a pretty inappropriate gesture and I told him no and why it was a number. He wasn't being flippant, just turns out he was scared of where our relationship was going. We ended up working on ourselves and were married 5 years later. He brought me up to his apartment about a 2-hour drive from my college. I was basically trapped there. He asked me while he was feeling insecure about the relationship and figured a proposal would lock me in place. I dodged it for a few days, but I needed to get back to classes and he wouldn't take me back till I said yes. I figured he was a bright guy and would come to his senses eventually. He got me back to school. Eventually he realized that coercion is not a good proposal strategy. I had an ex-boyfriend that I hadn't even seen or spoken to in 3 months show up to my parents' house at 3 a.m. My stepmom would stay up to all hours of the night watching TV, so she saw his car lights when he pulled into the side driveway. She came and got me furious. He was there and asked why I lied about breaking up with him. I had to explain we were broken up and I had no idea why he was there. When I went outside, he was leaning on his car looking love-struck and crazy. He told me that the universe wanted us together and it was cosmic fate. He then pulled out a frat boy bottle opener ring with a cat toy tied to it and told me he had an important question to ask me. I told him no flat out before he even asked. I pointed at his car and told him to go home. When he asked why, I listed all the things that led me to break up with him, including him dropping out of school multiple times and not having a job once during our 2-year relationship. He told me he did have a job now. When I asked where he worked, because I knew he was lying, he looked me in the eyes and said if he told me that he'd have to kill me. I had enough and told him to get the hell off my family's property, and he left reluctantly, telling me he'd be back. I never saw him again, but I heard through the grapevine that he told others that he had shown up in a tux with a huge diamond ring that I threw on the ground. I used to wonder what would have happened if my stepmom didn't see his car pull up. Sorry for typos. I'm on mobile. A few years back, I was dating this guy. At first, he seemed very kind, sweet and happy. Handsome too. I thought he was a great catch, especially as some toxic friends of mine were lowering my self-esteem. A few months after we started dating, he started changing. It was subtle at first. He would stop spending time with me and blaming me for it. Then came the gaslighting and manipulation. He started isolating me from my family and hurting me when I refused to do things for him. Eventually, I got the strength to deal with the situation and tell him that we were over. To get me to stay, he hosted a large party with lots of friends and publicly asked me to marry him. I said number. A girl I was casually dating, not even in a relationship with, proposed in front of her toddler niece and nephews and a large crowd of people at the aquarium. Even asked her nephew, "Do you want top to be anti-op?" With the ring in hand, I said yes in public and then no privately. Never saw her again after that one. Ex asked me over lunch to marry him. He'd broken up with me about once a week for the last few months over nothing. He had serious emotional, mood issues that have now been diagnosed, but he was just a really difficult person to be around in general. I started laughing because it was just absolutely ridiculous. He asked why I was laughing and I brought up how he broke up with me every single week. He flat out said he wanted to get married because then he knew he wouldn't be able to leave. As if that stopped people from just getting a divorce. We broke up for good not long after this, but the whole thing was bananas. We were both 18 and still in high school. It was around 10 months into our relationship. I broke up with him. I get an urgent call from him to please come over to my house. I need you. I was legitimately worried at this point. Went to his house. There was a dress on his bed and a note to meet him at the bay. At this point I'm just annoyed and didn't pick up on it. I drive to the bay and I walk up to him dressed in a suit. I'm so confused at this point. We sit down to talk and he goes into the speech and stands up to kneel. At that moment I realize what's up. I quickly stand with him and ask him to stop. I didn't want to ruin this moment for him forever. We just sat there and cried together. He thought that if he made a grand gesture that I would want to get back together. If anything, it showed me he would truly do. Say anything to get what he wants. It was heartbreaking all around. We were 19 and 21 and had been together for 2 years. He took me to Paris, pulled out all the stops and proposed under the Eiffel Tower. I told him it wasn't a no, it was a not yet, if he would wait. I wanted to travel and knew I was too young for marriage. We ended up traveling together, making amazing memories through the years. We got engaged when I was 24 and married when I was 27 in the most perfect service and have been happily married 4 years next week. I was literally breaking up with him because he was abusive, manipulative, and our life goals did not match up. I wanted to get married and maybe have children and he didn't. I had packed up most of my things while he was at work, and when he got home, we had the long-awaited conversation and he pulls out the Taco Bell hot sauce packet that said "Marry Me" on it. When I told him absolutely not, he then grabs the keys to his shotgun cable lock along with the ammo and hands them to me and says, "Take this, cause I can't be trusted with it," implying he was going to kill himself. This was about 5 or 6 months after my dad had committed suicide. My ex was an abusive narcissist. I was 21, very naive, first relationship. He was 54 and divorced. I had been gaslit and pushed into the relationship but didn't realize that until later. He demanded keys to my apartment and passwords but refused to give me his, and a whole list of crap like this. Now I wouldn't put up with it, but at the time I did. He proposed at 11 months, but by then he was verbally and emotionally abusive and had come close to hitting me. My sperm donor father was a very abusive alcoholic, so I only have memories of his BS, and I knew I didn't want to repeat the abuse cycle. My mom, grandma, and aunt have all had abusive husbands and I didn't want it to continue with me. Once ex-BF became abusive, I warned him to knock that shit off or I'd leave. He proposed after calling me a stupid bitch. I followed through. I changed the locks in my apartment and my passwords. He actually called me after I changed my passwords screaming about it. I broke up with him. Why the hell is he trying to get into my stuff? After a few weeks of me refusing to go back to him, he contacted my boss and accused me of stealing and contacted the fire department I volunteered with and accused me of endangering my team to showboat and get attention. Thankfully both believed me over him and he was blacklisted. He tried to show up several more times at FD events and he was always immediately escorted off property. I'm still glad I got rid of that all. I had a boyfriend cheat on me so many times. The breakup was hard, but then he got activated from the military reserves. I didn't meet anyone till 2 months before he came back. The whole time I wanted him back, but he and I weren't really officially together, and I knew he was talking to another girl the whole time he was gone. He came back and saw the other girl first. He says to break up with her. You're right. And I realized I didn't like him. Thank God, he showed up at my apartment, saw me with my new boyfriend, and proposed in a crying fit. It was horrid. 3 months earlier and I'd have done it, but thank God for the timing of things. My mom said no to my dad the first time. He decided that he wanted to spend his life with her and wanted that to start ASAP. Still, they'd been dating less than a year and she was very nervous about rushing into things, even though they were madly in love. After a few days of continued discussion, she came around to his point of view. That is, if we're talking about starting a family, why bother postponing the legalities? So they got married 6 weeks later, and here we all are after 33 years, with them still madly in love. I said no the first time my ex-husband asked me to marry him because my mom legitimately cried when I said I thought he was going to propose. Like, your soul is breaking crying. She said he would make my life miserable and she didn't want me to experience that kind of heartbreak. I got married to him a few months later because I found out I was pregnant. Honestly, Mom was not wrong. Everything about our relationship sets of red flags. I was 21 and he was 27. We started dating when I was 16. He didn't like any of my friends, high school or college. He checked my text messages all the time. He had me move in with him so he could take care of me during my final stressful year of college, but I ended up doing all the housework, cooking, and cleaning. He made decent enough money but spent it all on luxuries for him, to the point where we were constantly broke. After we had my daughter, he insisted on moving away from my family to live in another city. I had no support and he was absolutely useless at helping with anything baby-related. And then my dumbass stuck around for another 8 years. Honestly, should have bounced on the second proposal too. Fucking grats. We'd been together about a year at this point, and I'd made it clear to him that marriage was a big scary thing I wasn't ready for yet. About a month later, we went away for a weekend to one of our usual haunts. I was looking out the hotel window at something when he suddenly said my name. I turned around and he was stood there with the ring, and then asked me to marry him. I was so shocked and upset that he clearly didn't listen that I ran out into the street crying. I called my parents and one of my friends, all of whom were incredibly pissed off that he didn't respect my wishes, and wondered what the hell I was supposed to do. I eventually composed myself and went back into the hotel, but obviously we were both very upset. He said we could just break it off if it's too much, or we could stay together, and he'd promised not to mention marriage again. We took the second option. We did get married a couple of years later, but this was mainly because A, he was the least shitty partner I'd had at that point, and I did that dangerous thing of, well, he does A, but at least he doesn't do B and C. B, I was content, and thought happy was a daft Hollywood thing, and C, I thought I was being mature and grown up, and wanted to reward him for sort of looking after me when I'd been ill a few months prior. We got divorced about 5 years ago, and I realized now that not only were we very incompatible, but he was incredibly pushy and always found a way to get what he wanted. He told me later he had planned to propose in the restaurant, so thank Christ he didn't do that. We'd been together for 4 nearly blissful years, then went long distance for 1. A few months prior, when we were long distance, he cheated on me, then dumped me for her. He came back, realized he's made a mistake, asked me to be with him again. I took him back for all the wrong reasons and things were never the same again. So when I went over to finally end it, hopefully on good terms, he pulled out a ring. It just fell flat. I told him it's all wrong. He said later that he realized the moment he did it, it was the wrong thing to do. He wanted me to keep the ring, which was non-traditional. It's been 20+ years and I still love him like a favorite childhood cousin, but I'm glad we never married. Second one happened the same day. While BF and I were broken up, I got with someone I had been ignoring an attraction toward for years. D. We had an intense little love affair while backpacking through America, but I realized he wasn't the one while he realized he wanted to marry me. We split up at the end of our trip and the wrong reason I got back with ex-BF was to keep myself from having sex with D. I would be faithful, and my attraction to him was dangerous otherwise. There were other better reasons for getting back with ex, too, but this was a factor. After I broke up with ex that day, I went to a friend's house and he was there. He asked me to go for a walk with him and asked me to marry him, spontaneously, seriously, said he couldn't imagine a life without me. I said no, we're just not right for each other. He laid on a massive guilt trip, which was another clue that I shouldn't be with him. I never saw him again after that. Hobby and I met when we were 23. I was getting out of an abusive relationship and he was getting out of an abusive marriage. Yep, I said hobby. My story's a bit different. Lol. After about a year of dating he started seriously talking marriage and I was kinda dragging my feet. Not BC I didn't love him. It was just so soon after both of our shitty relationships. Then, a couple months after the initial chat I ended up pregnant. Things were good and about 8 months in, a little over a month before I was due, he popped the question and I said number. I still had reservations and being pregnant didn't change that for me, it only made me worry more, but he understood. I kept the ring and wore it in a chain. We'd already lived together most of this time, and we started our family as a couple but unmarried with a kid. When our daughter was 18 months old she was our flower girl at our backyard wedding. We've been together since '01, and we have a teenage son now too. So eventually I did say yes. Lol. We were high school sweethearts, even though we dated since the second month of our freshman year of high school. I had zero assumptions that we'd get married or even stay together after high school. Everyone including him was adamantly encouraging me to follow him to the university he was going to, and I was dead set on going to a very different school that everyone deemed beneath me. Our families held a joint graduation party for us at his family's house after we did the official school walk. Diploma thing. I was asked to grab something upstairs from his room. When I came back to the top of the stairs and looked down, every member, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings, parents, of both of our families was standing on the bottom floor looking up at me expectantly as he knelt at the bottom of the stairs with the ring. I was shocked. I didn't want to come down the stairs but I did. Shaky legs trembling from adrenaline. I started crying, which was misinterpreted as a yes, and everyone cheered. I grabbed him and ran out the front door. We talked and I told him we weren't on the same page and I just couldn't go back in there. He was devastated. I left the party. Unbeknownst to everyone, including him, I was planning to leave to work abroad for the summer. I was keeping it a secret so that no one could talk me out of it, and I was going abroad primarily so I wouldn't have to deal with more pressure to switch schools over the summer. So when I left the party, I decided that rather than wait to leave until the next morning, I'd just get my stuff together and go now. I was out of the house within the hour, having left pre-written notes for everyone letting them know I'd contact them when I got where I was going. Pretty much everyone was livid with me. I'll admit that literally running away from the pressure and continued conversations I didn't want to have was not the most grown-up thing to do, but I still maintain it was the right thing for me to do. How many times can you calmly tell people to let you lead the life you want only to have them not listen to you and tell you they know better? Insist you live your life according to their wishes. I'd reached my limit and that trip allowed me to assert my independence, find myself and my own voice. I came back a new person and I believe I've had a much happier life for following my own path. Childhood sweetheart and boyfriend in Paris asked me to marry him during a drunk night out, said we should move to Vietnam and start a movie company. I thought he was joking. When I said no, he went on a 5-day drinking binge. I had said no because I knew he was alcoholic. Well, fast forward 20 octoseconds, he now lives in Vietnam, has a movie company, stopped drinking and happily married. Good on him. Apart from the alcoholism, he was a great guy. Glad he realized his dream. I do not know if this counts because we never actually dated. My best friend kept trying to ask me to date him and proclaim his love to me, and I would constantly have to tell him that I wasn't interested and there was nothing he could do to make me interested. I just wanted to be friends because he was a nice guy, but we were not compatible in the long run. However, that didn't stop him because he would back off for a couple months and be normal, and then out of the blue he would ask me to marry him. No ring, thankfully, because I'm sure he knew the answer. I would eventually stop answering and change the subject, but it took a long time to get him off my back.